This guy had tried everything. Everyone laughed at him for choosing the gunslinger class, considered the worst of them all. But little did they know, it was actually a legendary class. Before awakening though, his past life was complete trash. His sister was erased right in front of him while Louis couldn't do a thing. The bullies glared at him and threw his sister to the ground. He could only cry, unable to even stand up. At that moment, a sword pierced his back. The men laughed as they kicked him and his sister, calling them weaklings. Louis kept breathing, regretting his entire life. His greatest dream had been to protect his sister. But he never imagined that the game Yuan World would become reality, and every player would gain the powers they had in the game. But since he hadn't played much, he was stuck with a weak character. Even so, he was a Chad driven by fury. He wouldn't let those bastards laugh at his sister's death. Louis stood up screaming and slammed the sword into that bastard's head. Only then did he fall to the ground, content to die in peace. But something happened after that. He woke up in his bed 3 years before the game became reality. Louis sat up abruptly, unable to believe what was happening. He clearly remembered being killed. Looking around, he didn't recognize where he was until he realized it was his old apartment where he had lived 3 years ago. Suddenly, the door opened and a female voice echoed through the room. Louis froze, unable to believe his eyes. In the hallway stood his sister, holding a box that contained the access key for the game Yuan World. With a trembling voice, he asked what year it was. Liu Yun, surprised by the question, joked that he seemed to have woken up in a bad mood and said the year was 2030. That hit him hard. Liu Ya stood motionless, unable to believe what he was hearing. Getting up quickly, he ran to the window. With his mouth agape, he realized he had returned to the exact day the game Yuan World first went live. Without hesitation, he hugged his sister tightly and promised himself that this time, he wouldn't let them die. He would become the strongest player as long as this wasn't all just a dream. It was July 27, 2030. The virtual reality game Yuan World was launched, and on September 1st, it took control of the world. All players received the abilities of their in-game characters. The marginalized and the lower classes of society suddenly acquired incredible powers. For the first time, they felt a strength they never imagined they could possess. Because of this, chaos erupted and endless wars for money and power began. Our protagonist chose the path of a player who simply explored the game's world. This led him to a tragic fate. Due to his low level, he ended up dying in Yuan World. However, by some miracle, he had an unexpected stroke of luck. He was reborn and returned 3 years in time to the exact moment the game was about to be released. This time, he was determined to become the strongest. Mentally, he returned to reality and was surprised when his sister pushed him away. Without realizing it, he had started to hug her. She was extremely embarrassed, thinking her brother was just messing with her. Scratching his head, he gave an awkward smile and said, surprised that it really did seem like that. We fast forward 8 hours to the launch of Yuan World. Our protagonist put on his virtual reality headset and lay down on his bed. He knew there were only 34 days left before the game would dominate the world. If he could become the strongest player in that time, he and his sister wouldn't die. Upon entering the game, he appeared in the starting plaza where several players were already gathered. In the center, an administrator was about to demonstrate the power of the ability called strength. The first strike he delivered was simple, cutting a large rock only halfway through. However, by focusing his energy, he delivered another attack with a single move, splitting the rock in two as if it were butter. The demonstration deeply surprised Lue, who watched with his mouth wide open. After the training ended, the system transported our protagonist directly into the game. At the spawn point, several players looked around, dazzled by this new world. But Loya had only one focus, to level up as quickly as possible. He decided to choose the strength ability as it was considered the most mysterious and determined the difference between a common player and a true warrior. Without wasting any time, he set off in search of the training pavilion. In the world of Yuan World, there were no fixed combat classes, only a division based on the weapons used. Knowing this, Lu Ya wanted to master a weapon as quickly as possible, as the foundation of power lay in its mastery. Once he reached 100% proficiency with a weapon, he would have complete mastery over the strength ability. With this sense of urgency, he hurried to the weapons pavilion, worried that all the training areas would be crowded. However, to his surprise, when he entered the place, he realized it was completely empty. Lua didn't care. He was determined to achieve his goal. He went straight to the weapon rack and began his selection. The katana was his favorite weapon, so he decided to start with it. But he knew he had to test all the available options. After 5 intense hours of training, he was exhausted. Even so, he managed to completely master the use of the katana, making it his primary weapon. Despite his fatigue, he knew he had no time to lose. Without hesitation, he picked up a long sword and began a new training cycle, pushing himself to the limit and ignoring his own exhaustion. In the weapons pavilion, a couple walked through the corridors, admiring how realistic everything around them was. Suddenly, the girl noticed a training pavilion behind the guy. Curious about the sounds coming from inside, she asked, "What could be in there?" The guy looked up, saw the sign above the entrance, and commented that it was probably a training area. Without hesitating, the girl peeked around the corner of the door. It was then that she spotted our protagonist training tirelessly with a sword, honing his strikes against a wooden dummy. She noticed that Liu Ya was the only one training there, which seemed quite strange to her. The couple approached the weapon rack, but didn't pick up any weapons. They first wanted to understand how the training worked. They watched for a few minutes, then threw the weapons on the ground, saying it was a boring activity reserved for losers. As they were leaving, the guy explained that the training pavilion was only for increasing weapon proficiency and offered no other advantages. He even emphasized that reaching 100% proficiency required at least 10,000 strikes. The girl suggested they leave immediately and invest that time in leveling up. The guy agreed instantly. Before leaving, the girl glanced back at Liu Ya one more time. For some reason, he was etched into her memory. Liu Ya, for his part, didn't even notice anyone had been there. He struck relentlessly, showing no intention of resting. On the first day, he completely mastered the katana and the halberd, but his long-awaited special ability wasn't granted. On the second day, he reached maximum mastery with the spear, axe, shield, and hammer. Still, his power did not awaken. On the third day, while other players had already reached levels 10 to 20, Liu Ya was still at level 1, and his strength remained hidden. For a moment, he considered that maybe he should level up before continuing to train. But he quickly dismissed the thought. If he wanted to become the strongest player, he had to obtain his ability at any cost. Nothing would stop him. Once again, the scene shifts to the street near the training pavilion. The same couple was walking by discussing the fact that a player had died. The penalty in UN World was cruel. Upon death, a player lost all their experience levels. In the middle of their conversation, the girl spotted Liu Ye again and was incredibly surprised. He was still training. The guy next to her was also shocked. He said there were many more exciting ways to play, far better than spending days training nonstop. The intrigued girl couldn't understand why Liu Ya was so persistent. Her friend suggested that maybe he knew some hidden secret. Excited, he thought about trying to master a weapon, too. However, the girl shot down his idea. She claimed it was useless, as Liu Ya had already been training for 3 whole days, and nothing had changed. While other players were reaching level 20, he was just honing his weapon skills. He wouldn't stand a chance of winning that way. Liu Ya, however, completely ignored the couple. He had a goal and wouldn't waste time on distractions. The girl grew irritated with his obsession. She said Liu Ya seemed like a gaming addict, and that even if he did become the strongest fighter, she would never try weapon training. To her, The time was better spent leveling up. With no patience to stay there any longer, she pulled her friend's arm and insisted they leave. They needed to gain more experience as soon as possible. Days later, our protagonist received an unexpected notification. He had mastered 18 types of weapons and, as a result, earned the title of Weapon Master. Now he was able to use the abilities and characteristics of the other 17 weapons with any main weapon he chose. With a whip in his hands, he was exhausted and stood motionless, processing the message before his eyes. He couldn't understand what was happening. He had mastered every possible melee weapon, but his long-awaited special ability never manifested. Because of this, he decided to ditch bladed weapons. Perhaps his true talent lay with firearms. Without wasting time, he headed to the firearms pavilion. As he walked, he reflected on something curious.